508-142 operating are present. The detective has retaken his stand. Mr. Tacopina?
Your Honor, just for, I'm not exactly sure where we left off. Could I just have that last question right
Yes.
back? Is that possible?
I just need a moment.
Okay, sorry.
No, they're not. It's just on my system. Okay. So that's the case.
Chad? Is that thing gonna work in this?
It's working, yeah.
The Elmo thing?
Yep. Oh, as the Elmo, you mean?
The last?
There was a question that was not completed. Do you have a question prior to that?
Yes, please.
Question, and that's when he told the police he never saw Ills with a knife when he first reported the incident on November 8th, 2021, right? Answer, correct. Question, was that truthful testimony? Answer, yes. And then there was a following question that wasn't completed. The question wasn't. That's what it was.
All right. Let me see that following question.
Question, how about this? When Mr. Ephron first reported the incident on November 8th, 2021, he in fact said,
Oh, and that's when it all starts. Back and forth and all that. So I can pick up from there.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. So the last question that was answered that was not sustained was that when Mr. Ephron first reported this to the police, the incident to the police on November 8th, he said that he saw ASAP Ills armed with a knife, correct?
Okay, Your Honor, I'm going to object to multiple levels of hearsay.
He said it to him.
Was that to you?
Yes.
I'm asking the...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
When I interviewed Mr. Ephron, no, he did not identify Ills.
Thank you.
As
So-
long as being armed.
Right, he did not, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, when he spoke, are you Detective Flores, right?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, Detective Flores, on November 8th, 2021, Mr. Ephron said he saw Mr. Ills with a knife when you interviewed him on November 8th, correct?
Judge, it lacks foundation that he interviewed him on the 8th, and to the extent he's asking him what he said to another police officer, it's multiple levels of hearsay.
Could I respond, Your Honor? First of all, I don't understand the objection. It lacks foundation that he interviewed him on the 8th. It's been established on this record that Mr. Detective Flores interviewed Mr. Ephron on the 8th.
So the objection is really to the form of the question. When you interviewed him on November 8th, the complaining witness say that Mr. Ills had a knife.
No, ma'am, we interviewed him telephonically the first time on the 9th, November 9th, telephonically. And from my recollection, he did not identify Elijah Longo, known as Ills, as the person who had a knife.
You're saying he did not?
Did not.
Okay. When you interviewed him, and why don't you go to your police report on 14, Exhibit 14. You have that book up there or not?
I can sit down there.
There you go.
Which report?
14. It's Exhibit 14. Okay. That's a report that you are on, correct? As one of the interviewing officers, correct?
I am listed as one of the officers on the report, yes.
Okay. So, during this interview, and this was again an interview from August 5th, 2022, correct?
Can I just ask where counsel's directing you in the report?
Sure.
Yes.
The top page that says date of this report.
Okay.
You see that?
Correct.
What's the date?
That's August 5th, 2022 is the
Okay.
date of this report.
This
The
report.
summary was done.
Okay. And it's the date, a report dated August 5th, 2022 of an interview from when?
No, sir, this is not, this is a summary for the purposes of the filing of this case.
Okay.
So it's a collective summary of the investigation that's used to file the case with the district attorney's office.
Okay.
So it's a kind of a collective of prior statements and a summary of the investigation overall.
Right. And what you wrote in the last line of the first page of the collective statements is that the victim observed that Ulanga was armed with a knife, right?
That's what it says here, but just to clarify, I did not write this report. My partner, Detective Camacho, prepared this report.
Well, your name's on the report, right?
It is.
Do you disagree with the accuracy of this report?
I do.
You do?
Yes.
Oh, so the person who wrote this, Detective Camacho, made a mistake here, according to you.
Sir, if you read on towards the second page,
Yep.
I believe the first page is a summary that it sounds like of the investigation as they took it from the initial investigating officer, which would be Mr. Detective Clayton.
Sure.
So they initialized their initial encounter with him, which I was not present for. But at the end of page 2, I believe he clarifies, which references the interview on the 9th, which I was present for, that where he, I think, clarifies and makes it known who had the knife.
When you say he, Detective Camacho clarifies in the report? or-
On the report and
Hold
for,
on,
I'm sorry,
let me finish. Or the complaining witness clarifies, and that's reflected in the report?
that's correct, ma'am.
Which one?
The
This-
latter.
The latter.
Okay. Well, so you're testifying that the complaining witness was clarifying something. Okay. How does that have to do with the accuracy of this report on page 1 where it says the victim observed Ills armed with a knife?
My interviews with Mr. Ephron
Yeah.
on November 9th and again on December 17th, he never identified anybody else other than Mr. Phillips, ASAP 12 as the person with the knife.
Okay. But obviously you'd agree then that this police report of yours and Camacho's, Detective Camacho, because you're both on it, is incorrect in that regard.
That beginning portion, I'm not sure exactly, as I was explaining where it was sourced from. If it was from their initial encounter with the initial detective Clayton, whether that was summarized or given to him verbally, I don't know where he sourced that from, but from my personal interviews that I was involved in with Mr. Ephron in November 9th, telephonic, and December of 2021, we never identified anybody else other than ASAP 12 as the person with the knife.
Right.
But for the court's clarification, since the inception of your interview with the complaining witness, there was reference to an individual with a knife.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll get that in a second. That's a good question. But to be clear, you say you're not sure where he sourced it from? It says the victim observed that Ills was armed with a knife. So it would be fair to say he, Detective Camacho, sourced it from Mr. Ephron, correct?
Again, sir, I wasn't there present to hear it.
Right.
So he could have either sourced from Mr. Ephron or from the original detective.
So when did you opined that you thought this report was inaccurate in that regard? When did you determine that that was an inaccurate report?
In reviewing it, actually, today, going through it more so, I do see that there is a correction as far as the portion of what I was present for the interview, where it clearly says who has the knife during the initial encounter.
Well, it could be that, or it could be that he gave two different versions, right? Because one police report says that he said it was ASAP Ills. Another says he said it was 12 right?
There is that reference in that report, sir, but I'm telling you, as far as what I was present for on 2 occasions, that what I was told was unequivocally that it was Jamal Phillips, 12.
Did you ever ask Detective Camacho to correct this report?
I don't, but that's something we can do.
Something you what?
That's something we can address, yes, sir.
You can, huh?
Yes.
Is there a particular time you're going
Well-
to wait to address that?
Objection argument. You're on.
Sustained.
Did you say today was the first day you noticed that report was wrong?
In reviewing it, yes, as far as going through it, I've reviewed the other personal interviews that I was involved in, which is what I prepared for. But in looking at that, the way it reads on that first page, though it's clarified on the second page, I can see how it reads inaccurate.
Yeah, that was not my question. Here's my question. Is today the first day you noticed that this report was wrong? Today? November 2023. No, not answering.
My apologies. I didn't mean to cut you off. My objection is that it's been asked and answered and that it's really not relevant.
He said in reviewing it, yes,
We're repeating, yes, today's the first day.
yes.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Now, the person, whoever that person is that Mr. Ephron said had a knife that day, would either be ASAP Bills or 12E, was also the two people that he told the police, ASAP Bills and 12E, that were trying to de-escalate the situation at the time, correct?
I'm going to object that it misstates his prior testimony, Your Honor. He's testified that the victim only told him that it was Mr. Phillips who had the knife.
Correct, but I think the question
It
is
was, Your
relative to the difference in the police report on page 1 of the report that
You're
we're looking
correct,
at,
Your Honor.
and page 2. So,
Anyway,
you can
again,
answer.
whoever it was, right, there's two different names in the report. We understand what your position is.
Correct.
My question was that either of those two people, Mr. Ephron told you that both 12E and ASAP Bills were attempting to de-escalate the situation at the time, correct?
At different portions of the initial confrontation and what he observed, then running up behind, trying to get himself in between, and then later observations of one of the individuals obviously having a knife, his interpretation changed, but it depends on what portion of the video you're pointing to.
Who was the first police officer Mr. Ephron spoke to at your department?
It would be listed on the initial crime report, the desk officer that he reported to on the 8th, evening of the 8th.
That's Detective Anderson, correct?
I believe it's Officer Anderson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Officer Anderson, you're right, it is. And are you aware that when speaking to Officer Anderson about the incident 2 days earlier, Mr. Ephron didn't even mention a knife?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, that it would call for hearsay, and what the detective is aware of is irrelevant with regard to that interview.
It's the same as you were saying.
When Mr. Ephron first reported this incident to the police on November 8th, 2021, he said that Mr. Mayer shot at him 3 to 4 rounds. Correct? We've already established that, yeah.
Again, Your Honor, it calls for multiple levels of hearsay.
Ask an answer.
Thank you. As part of your investigation of this case, you're aware that Mr. Ephron filed a civil suit against Mr. Mayers claiming that he was actually struck by a bullet, projectile, or fragment, right?
Objection relevant.
Sustained.
Relevance?
Well,
It's a statement. I'm not asking about the civil lawsuit. I'm asking about the claim in the civil lawsuit that he claimed he was struck by a bullet.
repeat your question,
Sure.
please.
As part of your investigation in this case, Detective, you're aware that Mr. Ephron filed a civil lawsuit against Mr. Mayers claiming that he was actually struck by a bullet or fragments of a bullet, correct?
It would be the same objection, Your Honor,
Say it for the record, please.
that it's irrelevant if the detective's aware of the lawsuit that the victim has.
Sustained.
Okay, just to be clear, Your Honor, I'll accept your rule and move on. I didn't ask him if he was aware of a lawsuit. I asked him if he was aware that in the lawsuit, he said he was actually struck by a bullet, which is different than what's about that.
I would object that it's hearsay.
The court's already sustained the objection. Questions not coming in. Any iteration and questions not coming in.
Well, in any event, were you here for that part of the testimony on November 8th when Mr. Ephron actually said he was shot?
Yes,
You were in the courtroom for that one?
yes.
All right. When he first reported this incident in November of 2021, November 8th to be exact, he only stated that he believed he was grazed on his left knuckle area, right?
Again, Your Honor, I object it's multiple levels of hearsay.
Stop.
Sustained.
It's to this officer, Your Honor.
No, your question was when he first reported, he did not first report to this detective. So it would be hearsay, it would be multiple levels of hearsay.
When you spoke to him for the first time, and that was on what day, the 9th?
The ninth.
Right. Mr. Ephron told you that he believed he was grazed on his left hand knuckle area, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And despite supposedly being grazed by a bullet on November 6th, 2021, Mr. Ephron didn't seek medical treatment until returning to New York.
That's correct.
So he waited to fly all the way across country to receive medical treatment for a shooting that took place in Los Angeles, right?
Yes,
And in fact, Mr. Ephron sought treatment from Dr. Tahar at the Metropolitan Hospital in New York, right?
I know it was at the Metropolitan Hospital. I'm not sure what the name of the doctor was.
Okay. And to state the obvious, obviously there are hospitals in Los Angeles, right, that could have treated whatever this injury was.
There are, sir.
But instead, he flew all the way across country before seeking treatment. Correct?
Objection has been asked and answered multiple times.
Sustained.
Yep. By the way, you never sought to obtain his medical records to corroborate his claim that the injury was from a bullet graze, did you?
Objection calls for discovery relative.
Sustained.
Well, I'm not asking for the medical records. I'm not calling for discovery. I'm asking if the officer in establishing probable cause ever sought to obtain the medical records.
It just calls for discovery.
In fact, the only medical documentation you did, in fact, obtain in this case was a medical bill to Mr. Ephron for $2,000, more or less, right?
Yes, as a point of reference.
As a point of reference. What do you mean by that?
Well, so if later on there was follow-up required, we would know what records to refer to.
Okay.
Right, so we had a proof that he had gone and we had some ability to follow up on it.
You had the ability to follow up on it?
Correct.
Did you use that ability to follow
No,
up
I
on
did
it?
not.
Same
And you-
objection, Your Honor, that it call for discovery.
Sustained.
So to be clear, you have no independent medical evidence relating to a specific treatment or diagnosis that would corroborate Mr. Ephron's claim that he was shot.
Same objection. Calls for discovery.
Sustained.
You've seen the photograph of this ghastly injury to Mr. Ephron. Withdrawn. You've seen the photograph of the injury to Mr. Ephron's knuckle area, right?
Yes.
I'm just going to put that up here for a second. That one right there, right?
Yes.
It's a miracle he survived that shooting.
Your
All right,
Honor, I
detective.
object to the argumentative.
Sustained.
Okay. So, based on your experience, detective, look at me for a second. I'm going to ask you
Okay.
honestly, based on your experience, that injury, the scrape of the knuckles, 2 or 3 knuckles, depending on that photograph, appears to be consistent with him having hit someone or scraped it on the ground during a struggle, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Well, the video you watch, I think you testified to this earlier, shows Mr. Ephron struggling with Mr. Ills, I think, or Ace, right?
Yes, it appears on the video.
Does that appear to you to be a gunshot wound on that picture in evidence?
Objection, lax foundation calls for speculation.
Court's going to allow it.
Go ahead.
I can't tell you whether it is or it isn't, sir. I'm not a trained doctor or medical.
Oh, I know, you're a
Personnel.
detective for 27 years, please.
Counsel,
What did I do?
I warned you earlier about speaking over the witness. The witness is giving his
Yeah,
answer.
sorry,
You need to wait. John's making faces again.
sorry.
Sir, I can't tell you definitively whether it is or it isn't. I mean, if it was a punch, I would expect maybe a little bit higher on the knuckles versus the bottle end where the knuckles are here. A punch would be on the higher end. So that being further down on the knuckle area above the fingertips, I don't know. It could be consistent with either or.
Your Honor, can we have the witness describe for the record, because he was pointing to his hand as he was testifying to?
Yes, can you
Yes,
verbally
ma'am.
describe
The injuries appear to be on the kind of the bottom knuckle,
closer to the fingertips?
closer
for
to the
record?
fingertips. And generally, if it's a fist, traditionally a fist, punches, injuries, I would see more consistently with the knuckles closer to the wrist, as far as an impact or anything consistent. But again, depending on the way, I just say it could be consistent with either or.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, those, if you look at his knuckles right there, those scrapes appear to be dead square in the middle of the knuckle, right? You think that's on the higher part of the knuckle? Or is that right in the middle, where the fold is?
It looks like the lower portion to me, sir.
Okay. Well, if you did this, detective, you made a fist, right? And you did this, and hit that. You see where the red is on my knuckles? That did not feel good, by the way. I did that for you. Can you see that?
I see.
It's consistent where that is too, right?
That looks like it's right on the knuckle, not below the knuckle where you struck your hand.
Well, actually, let's take a close look at my hand then. You see that red right there? That's below the knuckle, towards the tip one, not in the middle of the knuckle, right?
I mean, that's your hand, sir. I'm not sure. What I'm seeing here is, I guess, as I explained, it could be consistent with a strike or being shot at, a graze wound.
Graze wound. That looks like a graze wound to you?
Objection.
Sir, you're asking me my opinion. Just giving you my opinion.
It is argumentative, Your Honor.
It was, but the witness has answered. The court's going to accept his response. Thank you.
So in order for a bullet to leave, and those are, you would agree, superficial flesh wounds, right? There's no tissue missing there or anything, right?
Again, I'm not a doctor, sir.
I know you're not. But you're a police officer with common sense and a brain. So I'm going to ask you again. Those appear to be superficial flesh wounds without any tissue missing, right?
It looks like a wound across the tip of the flesh. That's the best I can describe it.
Those medical records may have helped you understand what that was, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Okay. So that would have had been some sort of like a magic bullet, right? It would have had a hit here, scrape here, and then take a nosedive down to that third number, right?
Object to the form of the question, Your Honor.
Sustained. When you stated the tip of the flesh, is your response that for you see flesh, Detective?
I see it's consistent with at least a scrape or what somebody might describe as a graze across the tips of the fingers there, which again, I can't say how it occurred definitively, but could it be consistent with something being struck in the ground, or again, maybe somebody in the right position being shot at, or putting their hands up in defense and the bullet grazing their pant?
Hands up in defense. So if they put the hand up in defense being shot at, wouldn't the bullet go like through their hand?
No, sir, it just depends on if somebody's running and scrambling for their lives and they have their hands up and they're moving around. It's hard to say which position they have their hands when the round is ultimately fired when they're scrambling. I can't tell you, I can't recreate it. All I can tell you is what I think. It could be consistent.
Okay. Well, you would agree that if someone is shot at and all they have on them from being struck by a bullet is those two little scrapes on the knuckle, they're pretty lucky, huh?
Very fortunate.
Yeah. So Mr. Ephron made his initial complaint on November 8th, 2021, 2 days after being shot at, according to him. It's fair to say that one of the reasons law enforcement waited 5 months to arrest Mr. Mayers is because it had some concerns about his credibility, Mr. Ephron's credibility, correct?
No.
No?
I didn't have many concerns.
Okay.
Again, I described there was other factors,
Right.
other investigations, other things that were going on.
Well, what you did do was wait 5 months to arrest him because you were hoping to develop more evidence, right?
Well, again, at a point where we felt comfortable and work out the logistics for everything, there were other factors involved.
Right. But one of the things you said before was you were waiting to develop more evidence, correct?
Correct.
All right. And that never came, right?
No.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
One of the other points of investigation that you did take immediately after he was arrested was the search of his house that you already described, correct?
Correct.
Took time to draft and get a search warrant for that?
Correct.
Put together a team of people who would go and assist you in the search?
Yes.
Okay. No, I don't have any other follow-up. I'll send you that.
Mr. Tacopina, do you have anything based on those three questions?
No.
Detective, you're excused. Thank you very much. You're welcome.
No further witnesses from the people, Your Honor. I would move my exhibits 1 through, leave them up to 13.
People have 1 through 14, 14 as subparts A through F.
Yes, and I would move all of them and their subparts into evidence and then people rest.
And Tina, you were satisfied with the issue of the thumb drive? Thank you. Any objections to people's 1 through 14 being received into evidence?
No, no.
Thank you. They are received into evidence on behalf of the people. People rest. Any affirmative defense on behalf of Mr. Mayers?
You are right. Ms. Kaplan actually, my local counsel, reminded me to say something which I think may be obvious, but obviously no objection to be admitted into evidence, those exhibits, for the purpose of the prelim only, obviously. Right?
Well,
I don't know what that means, Your Honor.
Well, it means we're not at trial. This is the prelim only.
They are, I'm asking for them to be admitted to the court, meaning the court would retain possession of them, not that they're admitted by reference only, which is, it's my understanding it's not the court's
It's not the court's policy to receive exhibits by reference only. They are received into evidence. They will be retained in the court file should the matter be held to answer up until
Of
the
course.
next date.
Yeah, okay, that's, I think what I meant.
Okay.
Any affirmative defense on behalf of the defense?
No, Your Honor.
As to your exhibits A through F, do you wish to move them into evidence at this time?
Your Honor, yeah, the answer is yes, but I think only E really went in.
Your Honor, I know.
That's right, we collapsed
Yeah.
F into E,
Yes.
right?
Okay, you have the.
No,
Collapse, yes, you're right. You're right.
into E, yes. So it's A through E.
Yes.
Mr. President, you have a question?
Your Honor, I had previously objected to, maybe if I can see the exhibits, I can give you the exact number, but I know it was at least the first four. Can I see it?
Yeah.
Defense A.
A was the Instagram post, B was the photo of the large wad of cash, C was the photo on the plane.
All of these four are from Instagram, and I previously objected to them, and my understanding was that the court had sustained my objections, so I just want to maintain my objections.
No, the court sustained the objections to a different, well, the one with the guns in the waist, but not to those. Those
I
were,
don't think I did.
right.
I can pull the transcript for you.
My recollection was that the court ruled they were all irrelevant, they were all post-incident photographs.
Well, I don't remember at this juncture, so even over objection of the defense, the court's receiving them into evidence, noting that the defense is objecting to A, B, C, and D.
You said defense, but it's people, Your Honor, sorry, just to
Thank you.
clarify.
Because she can't find it right now. She can't find what the court's ruling was, but the objection is noted. The record is clear that you believe that you objected and the court sustained the objection. That's not the court's recollection, but I have my mind on other things. So. The court is receiving them into evidence at this time over the objection of the people for the reasons already stated for the record. Motion.
We're, again, can I have 1 second?
Yes.
Yeah.